was tunnel visioned, focused on flipping. For me, I felt like we needed to have a cash cow to try to have cash flow. Because I didn't want to go to bed at night worried about money.
The ones that have been the most profitable are the ones that they left their personal preferences out of it and instead focused on the quality of the flip. Welcome to the podcast. Appreciate you coming in, Matthew Gregory and Rebekah Gregory. Thank you so much. The better half, shall we say?
Way better half. We're happy to be here, man.
We were talking offline. You guys met at a Winn-Dixie where all great relationships start.
That's
I've
right.
heard.
That's right.
You know, I was actually a little disappointed it wasn't Piggly Wiggly. Because let's be honest, we're in the South.
It was definitely Winn-Dixie. Yeah.
So I'm originally from Colorado, and yeah, the Piggly Wiggly thing, I was like, this is a grocery store. This is not what you think. So that's awesome.
It was a grocery store.
So let's
the checkout line.
No, it wasn't.
That's awesome.
Yeah, actually in the bakery, I think, or in the deli.
I don't think we met there.
Okay.
We just happened to have friends, and that's where the friends all started from.
That's a better story, though.
Yeah,
I
it's a
actually
way
don't
better
think that
story.
was the first time I saw him. I think the first time we all went out as a group.
And you
to,
were
like Southside.
You were saying like you like to go to bands and like so like what?
Yes.
So what were some of the bands y'all were like listening to and kind of?
We went to Blues Traveler.
That was our Halloween night
Yep.
of like 95. It was the first time I remember us going out. He had a different date and I had a different date.
The story thickens. The plot thickens, y'all say.
Yeah.
But it was only
Let's not go there.
It was only about 6 weeks later, I think, that
yeah.
we were dating.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Good
awesome.
times, man.
Yeah, that's great.
times.
So let's
Long
talk
time ago.
about. Yeah, I mean, you've been flipping properties for a couple days now.
Yes. Yeah.
How long have you been
We started back
flipping
in the
properties?
1800s.
Yeah.
No. So we got married in 97. We bought our first house to move into in 98.
Mm-hmm.
Not with the intentions of flip, but it happened to be a fixer-upper because that's all we could afford to buy.
Okay.
It had the shag carpet and the overgrown bushes, and so we bought that. And under the shag carpet was beautiful hardwood floors, and we're like, maybe we can clean this thing up. So we worked nights and weekends, and by the time we were done, it was a beautiful little house that had equity, right?
Yeah.
So back then, house flipping really wasn't a thing. Like, you didn't have YouTube channels, you didn't have all the education you have now. So my stepdad had done some house flipping. So just watching him do it and kind of watching others do well and not do well, we kind of learned how to do it. And we bought our next house after that. And then I was always pretty ambitious and kind of had a goal. I wanted to flip houses.
That's awesome.
And that's kind of how it started. So I think full time, we started about 24 years ago, like 2000.
I think it was 2000, maybe 2001, that it was like we weren't doing anything. You weren't doing anything else.
Right. Just flipping houses.
Yeah, just full time. How long was that transition from when you started to like, hey, I'm going to flip that first house to like, let's get another one to like, we got to do this full time? Was that a quick
I think it was
transition?
pretty quick.
It was. So the other business we were running was a seasonal business anyways. So it freed them up outside of that. So we made enough money during that short season. And I think it was pretty quick. I mean, by the time he flipped like that first one that he bought just to flip, he just immediately moved into the second one. And then before you knew it, like he was doing multiples at a time. It just took, it was a slower build than it is like what people are expecting nowadays. You know?
Right. And did you know right off the bat, you're like, this is working. This is kind of like,
I
or were you like,
not,
hey, I'm nervous.
But I was young enough that I didn't know to be too nervous about
Maybe a little
anything.
naive at that age,
yeah,
right?
So I thought, I just felt like his family, like his mom and dad are both like successful. His mom's a big entrepreneur. So I just thought, it's just going to work.
Yeah.
I didn't really know. I think
Failing
it was not
an
later.
option, right?
Later,
Yeah.
once we had created a lot of debt to kind of build the business, was when I started feeling more like, and when we had kids, I was like, okay, this has got to work. We're going to have to make this work.
Yeah. For me, I saw opportunity and I'm like, off to the races. Let's go.
Yeah. And it's great, like, in real estate, there's so many ways to make money.
Right.
And I know that you're kind of expanding and trying different things, but for the most part, you built a bridge to one island, and that was flipping houses.
Yes.
And you guys learned how to do it very, very well.
tunnel visioned, focused on flipping, and for me, I felt like we needed to have a cash cow to try to have cash flow. So we needed to be able to have cash coming in and reserves to be able to buy other properties. So it just kind of made a lot of sense to flip as many as we could.
Yeah.
And then, my goal at first was, dude, I want to flip one house a month. I want to make 20 grand per flip. I want to make 20 grand a month. And then once I hit that pretty quick, I was like, maybe I could do 2 houses a month. And then, then it was, maybe we could do 3 houses a month. And then, you start scaling up and you start hiring a bigger team. And then once you hire these people, you got to make it work, right? So, it's been a great thing for us. It's been life-changing.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, and like I said, you said before, I'll drop a few nuggets. the cash cow into the cash flow. I've actually never heard that. Maybe that's a cliche out
Brian
there.
Tripp, actually.
I've heard it.
Yeah.
Well, but that's like, it's so true. It's like ultimately we know real estate can be really good, but it also can chew through liquidity.
Quickly. God, we learn that every day.
And so you got to keep big money in, big
That's
money
right.
out.
Yeah.
And so for you to say, hey, like, if I want to own rentals down the road, which you do now, and you have
Right.
some investment properties,
Right.
same Airbnbs and some long-term stuff, we need to make the cash on the front end.
That's right.
That's awesome.
And keep making that cash so that we can keep funding all these other, endeavors.
Yeah.
So, I think that's probably the most important thing for us is I didn't want to go to bed at night worried about money. So I have to keep that cash coming in. So the flipping is our primary focus.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. So talk me through the first couple of years. It's always good to reminisce and think through it. I think there are key lessons we learn in life that stick with us and go through the journey. What do y'all feel like some of those key early on lessons you learned that you still apply to your business today?
Okay.
For you, I think it's probably relationships. He started really early trying to build relationships with whatever was going to help him grow it. So at the time, I think it was with all of those REO agents or something.
Yeah.
And
Bank-owned properties. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he really worked it and tried to build where he wanted them to call him. Because at the time, he was small fry. So I think that was one of the things that you see.
In my mind, I was big though, right? Like I can do this.
He's like, I never was a small fry. Let's just be clear about
talking
this.
about?
Here's a big small fry. Yeah. And I think
From your wife's mouth. I'm just saying. Okay.
Thanks a lot, man. Come on.
so. And you see that still now with him, but he just has so many more relationships that he works. So I would say that, and then he just was a hard worker. Oh, hey, look at there.
It's okay. It's fine.
When we were younger, he worked every single day, every day. Saturday and Sundays he was gone too. Sometimes we would just load up the kids and we would just go with him so we could spend time with them. So, I just think hard work is something you still have to put in now.
Yeah.
And I think trying to do the right thing was always important to me. Taking care of the people who are buying our houses, who work with us, trying to do the right thing was probably what was extremely important to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned a long time ago, someone told me that your name is the most important thing you
Dude,
have.
it's valuable.
And so for you to care about the house after the sale, I'm sure there's been projects that you had to go back and
You
fix
have no
the
idea.
things.
Yeah, what happens is you can't make everybody happy, but somehow I've managed to do that, right? So making people happy can cost money. There's been times where I've chosen to do the right thing over profits. And I think that's important to learn.
Yeah, because that probably made you more money in the long run.
Absolutely.
Than anything
because
else.
I hear that every day. Man, you got such a good reputation. I've asked about you. Buyers will at every closing table they're like, we felt so comfortable with your product. Because when you scale a business, what's very important is to also have quality, and it's very hard to scale and keep a high quality, a high standard. So I think that's what we've done well too, is hiring the right people that could help us manage and keep the quality, high.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're kind of the nuts and bolts, the back end like guru that kind of keeps the wheel turning. And so
yes, so I would say that I'm more like the administrative side of things.
Yeah.
And when you have a company at this size,
But that's so important, man.
it's
so important.
massive.
Yeah.
And it helps keep, like you said, the oil of the machine. So talk me through that. Initially, no flipping a lot, full time. Where did you make the transition as, okay, I'm going to be like the full-time admin and really keep these things going? Were you doing it on the side? I'm sure kiddos being younger, it's hard to juggle.
It was a long time. Yeah. I was always like the accountant of it, but I would put it off. Like I would, because I was a nurse, and so I would worked full time at UAB, and then every couple of months I'd sit down and get all the accounting caught up. And he's like, "We can't do this." So I do think it was probably 2015. I think is about the time. Like I almost couldn't do any more nursing. I'd already gone like part time because it was just too hard to kind of balance the two.
Right.
So that was about the time. But I mean, once I joined full time, we scaled tremendously. It just took so much off of him. It was really what it was. He was spread too thin. He was, worried about the guy's hours or, how much he was spending. And so I think that's what it did. It just freed him up to do what he's best at.
Yeah. Yes.
He was probably recruiting you all along.
Oh, dude, you have no idea. I was
have
on
the
it.
loveless job, it's the same thing day in and day out. So it's not as glamorous
rewarding
as what he's doing. So.
Yeah. But in the end, it's given us a great life.
Yeah.
So, it is rewarding that way.
Yeah, it is interesting. Every great organization, I think, has the, visionary and the integrator. And, the fact that you all paired together also in a marriage is obviously an interesting and fun dynamic.
Yeah.
Talk me through, this is maybe a little more personal, but talk me through, the dynamics of being business partners and also being married and how you all have found, I'm sure early on it maybe wasn't the easiest, but I'm assuming you found some tips and some tricks of like leave it at the office or different things that I don't know if you leave it at the office.
I don't think you
She has quit so many times. Yeah.
At least
I'm like,
once a
please
week.
come back to work. Yeah.
At least once a week, I throw that out there. So no, you. It's a great idea to leave it at the office. You don't leave it at the office. You just don't. So
Especially when your office is in your home.
Yeah. So
that's even
I do
more
find that I'll be mad at him as a business partner. Then I'm mad at him because he's my husband. Because I'm mad at him, it's because he's my business partner.
Oh, she'll be pissed. Yeah, she'll be angry.
So seldom am I mad at him from being married and take it into the business. Like that almost never happens.
Yeah.
So usually any of our arguments usually are related to the business.
Right.
That or the children, which they're all basically grown. So
that
it's
makes
a
it even
challenge.
harder when they're grown, right?
So it is a struggle to find that line of like where you respect them as like a spouse and then where you're like, I feel like my opinion should matter in the business. And so, it can be a challenge. But I really think we've done, obviously we're still married.
Yeah.
And we like each other. So
Yeah.
I think we've done okay with it.
Yeah, it's worked.
That's awesome.
I do think
Communication
the
is
I'm
dynamic
very grateful for
of
that.
who we are has been the key to that. Just like I'm more fact-based and I don't hold grudges. So that really helps.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not for everyone, but it is good that y'all were able to kind of walk it through.
When it works well, it really works well, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And for us, it's worked well.
That's awesome.
Not all the time, but, here we are.
Yeah.
With a wonderful business, wonderful family.
That's awesome.
So very grateful for that.
That's amazing. So what I love about your story and the things that you bring to the table in this interview and stuff, we always like to try to bring insight into Birmingham specifically. There's a million episodes out there to teach you how to flip, but there's not very many people that know Birmingham and how to flip Birmingham. Talk me through some of the unique things that you've learned through this process that you have to do for flips, you have to be aware of. Like the builds in our city kind of range in dates. You know, some we have 1950 builds, you know, in the Vestavia areas and the Homewoods, and then you kind of move into like Alabaster, and you're more in the 1970s and stuff.
Newer homes.
Yeah, newer homes. So talk me through kind of what you know about Birmingham, the unique challenges and also benefits of this beautiful town.
Okay. First of all, I love Birmingham. I love Birmingham. Born and raised here. It's my heart. I feel like that's part of what drives me, right? And it's a land of opportunity. It's a great town because it's not too big, but it's big enough. And as far as real estate, it's been a learning curve, learning what maybe what a buyer in Mountain Brook might be a little different, what they would want than a buyer maybe in Roebuck, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's going to take a different type of skilled crew to do a house in Mountain Brook versus a house in maybe Clay or Grayson Valley.
Yeah.
So I think that's what, because we kind of scaled slowly, I think that I was able to learn that and not make big mistakes in that way where you wouldn't ever put a Wolf stove, a range in a house in Eastlake. And so I think in that way, I've kind of learned how to, what the buyers in those areas want. As far as what the age of the properties and all, once you start pulling permits and you learn what each of the cities want you to do, it gets pretty easy. So I don't know if that really answers the question, but
I think it does because, like you said, there's areas that value certain things, and certain finishes,
right,
and others won't, and you won't see the ROI, the
right,
return on that investment. And I would say
you don't want to overdo it, but you don't want to underdo it either.
Exactly.
You really want to learn what the buyer wants, and that's kind of our goal for every property: is who is our buyer. What do they want?
So I toured one of your flips. We were actually thinking about putting an offer on, and I was actually interested because you didn't have vanity lights. I know this is a very specific
can
example.
lights in the bathrooms.
Yeah, like you didn't have any vanity like thing, but you just had downlight. Is that something like tweaks like that you've found that are kind of like staying on top of trend, or is it hey, vanity lights are so buyer specific that if they really want something, they're going to buy it?
They're dated looking a lot of times. We try to buy them, and we just never like them. I would put sconces up in there to some of the nicer houses, but we just don't like the vanity lights most of the time.
Yeah, it's a preference, I think, for us.
Yeah,
and we and I try to leave what my personal preference is out as much as I can. Like I want to cater to the masses of people, and I think that the can lights work better than the vanity lights. So that's kind of what we've always done.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So there's just little tips and stuff.
And in the older homes, the vanity light is always lower, and the mirrors are kind of small.
Yeah.
I'm a tall guy, so I walk in there, and I'm like, all I can see is my belly button. It's like, dude, let's raise the mirror, let's raise the light, and then and the ceiling is usually 8 foot tall in most of these flips. So it just it makes the room feel higher, bigger, taller, right?
Yeah. So do you help out with a lot of those finishes, those conversations of like, hey, let's
in the beginning we did because I think we were trying to figure out what we liked, and we would go through a lot of pictures together and we'd go shopping. But now we kind of do the same thing over and over. So the only time, like yesterday, we spent half the day looking at finishes, going and looking at tile, because occasionally we'll have that special home that we need to do something more. But we kind of use the same thing. And I usually pick out the exterior color.
Yeah.
I try and stay, still we want to cater to the majority of people. So, I mean, it stays in the neutral colors.
Well,
once you find what works, you almost keep it, right?
They're not all white anymore.
Yeah.
So
you're changing it up a little bit.
bit.
But I mean, I would agree, like at the end of the day, you're here to provide a product for someone to make a home. Doesn't mean day one it's a home. They have to come in and bring their own style to it, their own, maybe they paint a wall an accent color.
Right.
And you can get so niche into like, yes, this is on trend, but then it literally will push out a section of buyers who don't like that trend.
True.
And so for I think what you do is very wise, and I've talked to several different flippers, and they trend with the ones that have been the most profitable are the ones that they left their personal preferences out of it and did neutral, did it nice, and instead focused on the quality of the flip. One thing that I know, I'm working on a project in Hueytown.
Okay.
And it's a burnout.
Yes.
And man, I'm telling you, we're down to the studs. I mean, we're going to be doing all new wiring, all new HVAC. Like, I mean, this is basically, besides the exterior of the house, a brand new house. And I'll say that I can explain that all day to a buyer compared to like the flip down the street. But some of those intangibles of the quality and the mechanicals just are never going to translate on your final price sometimes. But I feel better because I've done it right.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, that's important.
And
like waterproofing and things that are behind the walls, people might not really know until years later. But you still have to sleep at night, right? And you have to do the right thing. So for us, that's always important.
Yeah, it's fundamental, I think.
But that stuff costs a lot of money, right? Yeah. You can put a lot more money in a house when you do it the right way.
Yeah. But like you said, you've been doing this for so long, you don't have houses from 10 years ago. People are like, well, Matthew screwed up all those houses 10 years ago and your name's in the gutter now. So let's talk about it. So last night we actually met at the meetup. Okay. And you're talking about a house that you flipped twice.
Okay. I think I've done that quite a few times.
It's not just one?
Yeah. It's going to take me a second. Hang on, remember
which one it was, but you had talked about how the finishes were like
was
dated.
It like a clay one?
Yeah.
And you're like,
you go in
man,
and you're like, it's like, having the mullet haircut back in the 80s. Like, what was I thinking?
Maybe it was on Cheryl Drive.
I'm sure it was. I know I've done that a few times, but we've done about 1,400 flips. So there's a lot of flips out there.
But those early flips, he didn't do what we do now.
That's
a lot
extensive.
Of times it was more that.
It was more paint, flooring, and light
yes.
fixtures.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wait, Matthew Gregory was a newbie at one point
I
in
know.
time?
He skipped the houses that needed like new windows and that kind of thing because it was a lot more to take on, and so it was easier to turn a house in a few weeks and build up that cash flow, which gave him the ability now to do what we do.
Yeah. Well, I think also is the price range house. I started flipping higher price range houses where you couldn't get away with old windows. You couldn't get away with a few things so that's probably the biggest difference is I had to start spending more money on these properties because they were more expensive houses. So I needed a better rehab.
Your expectation rose with the, price point.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really big. So Rebekah, I want to talk through some of the back-end admin things that you have found to systems, because we live and die by the systems, What are some of the systems you've put in place over the years that have helped your company be successful?
I don't even know.
People probably getting paid on time is good.
Yes.
Hey,
Keeps
that's
them coming back.
For morale.
And that's what I'm saying. So things like that. Like I'm assuming if you fail to pay people on time, they're not going to show up on that Monday.
Right.
So talk through some of those
I feel
things
like we
that
run it
generate.
like a business. So we have payroll on Fridays and we pay all of the guys who come and work almost like an hourly. We also pay every contractor. So our plumbers, our HVAC, they just know now that they're going to get paid on Friday. So they almost all send their invoices on Thursday. So I do think that's important. But I guess, I run, it's a real accounting going on. So, every job job cost to everything.
Real time, too.
Yeah.
It's like, if it's spent at Lowe's at 9 o'clock, it's in our system by 9:30.
Wow.
So every guy has their own credit card, so I can monitor each guy who's out there able to buy. And then we're able
even their fuel and everything. Like, we know what's going on every day.
So does that help in sometimes you're like, hey, I've set a budget. We're sitting here.
I'm a little different in that. I'm a little different. I don't necessarily set a budget.
Okay.
I've never set a budget.
Yeah, but he does get a report weekly of what's being spent on each house. So at some point he could go, okay, guys, we have spent way too much on this one. We need to watch this.
But what's a budget going to do when the house needs what it needs, right? Like, it's got to be that Gregory standard, right? So just because we're over budget doesn't mean I have to stop spending money, right?
Yeah.
So
I think it helps us to like go find what we did, and then for the next house we go,
Right.
hey, if
How
we're
did I
spending
screw
too
that one up?
much,
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I offer too much on that? Did we underproject the?
Yeah.
do we need to find a new contractor to do, or a
Right.
sub
Yeah.
for whatever it was?
because there's a lot of moving parts. So I mean, they keep it going. So there's it feels like Microsoft some days, right? Like payroll checks that thick. Like so, it's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
There
mean,
is.
I saw your Instagram the other day, and I actually thought it was someone helping you out because it was just like boom, 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 and you're like, I'm going to visit all my properties, and I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to follow along,
Yeah,
and it just kept going.
That was a great
32
day.
It was a good-
I liked it too, and I'm not.
Dude, I put like 2,000 miles on my car that
you
day.
kicked it today. It was
Yeah,
nice.
yeah,
I
it
mean,
was fun.
just you must have been flying, but so at the time you have
I didn't
31
visit all
projects.
of them. Yeah.
That's crazy.
32 flips today is what we have going on in the flips. And
Right.
then we're, rehabbing rentals, and then we're rehabbing our project in Trustful. That's a big project.
Right.
A lot of times that project in itself would probably be enough to keep somebody very busy. And that's just a small piece of what we're doing. So, there's a lot of busy work going on.
Yeah,
Yeah, and thank God for our team, because we would not be able to do what we're doing without all these guys
yeah, that's amazing.
and girls.
So payroll is obviously one.
Yes, but
And
there's
then-
so much more to it. Obviously,
Right.
we have to have we have to have business license in every one of them. We have to make sure that we stay on top of that. I mean, we have all of these different companies. I have to make sure that our books are good. Like right now, I'm getting ready for taxes.
Right.
So I'll have 8 companies. I've got to get all of that prepared to give. So all of those things, like that keeps us legitimate too, because all of those things then have to be turned into all of our lenders. Anyone we borrow any money from, they need these kinds of things.
Bankers, yeah.
So those are things that he would never be able to do, even at his best.
Right. No argument here. I know. Yeah,
So
yeah, she's
there
right,
is a
yeah.
lot that goes into keeping all of that where at the moment's notice, my banker can call and I can give him tax returns, I can give him, P&Ls, balance sheets. So it's taken a long time to like really learn how to do some of those things. I think that, I've had a lot of teaching going on to get me to learn how to do some of the balance
But
sheet
she is
stuff.
so sharp, man. She's on it, dude. Yeah. And I'm also grateful for it, because not anyone could just,
But we're also
handle-
running the
fall into place.
Airbnbs, which
Right.
Yeah.
we have.
You do
I
that
don't know how-
in-house?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we have.
we're about to have 21 Airbnbs.
And we have, 50 or 60 rentals. Doors.
Yeah.
So, and that's all in house.
Yep.
And
That's a lot.
Yes.
That's
And
a lot.
then, we had some extra time on our hands, so we get in the mini storage business.
Yes. So he
What else
decided
could we
to do
do?
some self-storages, which at this point, we're not doing the management of that, but I still do the accounting of
Okay.
that. So
Right.
I'm still
Gotcha.
handling all of the books and making sure that that's covered. So
That's great.
And just managing the money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot going out, a lot going in, a lot coming in.
Yeah.
So
So I'm assuming with all these different companies, you come to a point in every, we stretch, right? And then we contract and we stretch and we
Right.
contract. And there's sometimes points in every one of our businesses where we expand so much that we have to answer the question, who, not how. What are some of the indicators that you guys have found in your businesses, like it's time to hire someone for this role? Or can we facilitate it ourselves? Like, what are some of those
Right.
things where those conversations you have of like, okay, it's time, we're underwater here.
that's always been a thing for us.
I gotta
Yeah.
stop.
yeah, we wait till we're drowning. Usually. We never.
When the water's up here,
Yeah.
and,
Ever
then, and they're like, we
hire-
Yeah,
probably
you got a straw, just barely get some oxygen. Yeah.
ever hire before it's probably been our biggest problem. But once we do hire them, usually there's always like an exponential growth because we realize
Because
what
we
needed.
continue to stay busy. Like, we don't just hang out at the beach or at the pool all day while
Yeah.
everybody's working. Like,
I'm trying to more and more.
she's like,
come on now. We
like
got to
the
grow this thing. Yeah. Yeah. That's probably what I'm having to learn a little bit is like, at what point do you kind of stop wanting to grow all the time? So
I don't think he'll have that, but I think you just know when you can't handle it anymore. But I think I would not recommend that strategy.
yeah,
I would say I think there are times we probably should have hired earlier, and we might have kept ourselves out of like just being so overwhelmed. And because I, more than him, feel a little tired from it. Like I feel a little more burnt out. He gets a lot of energy from it, and I don't. And so I think it
You
would
get
have
energy
kept
from
me.
purses and things like that. Whatever it takes. Let's go on a purse run. Yeah.
That usually gets me
That
going.
does help.
It gives me
At
a
least for a
high
few
for
hours.
about. No, I can usually go off of that for a couple of months because
That's
I
funny.
don't go for the little purses.
Her purses take a trip somewhere. Right?
You're going on a trip to buy the purse.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Mama's tired. She needs a purse.
So I would recommend probably hiring before you get to that stage,
Yeah.
and that way you can really incorporate like the best practices with that person versus like trying to figure out how to maybe undo some things that you were just doing to get by.
Right,
Which
yeah,
I
yeah.
found that I could do. Like there are things I had incorporated in my accounting that
Yeah.
I could handle. But as I started handing it off, I was like, oh, nobody else could do it. So I had to go backwards,
And-
fix it to where it was more fail-proof because
Yeah.
not everyone.
Well, at the
I'm not
end
gonna
of
be
the
like,
One
I'm
problem is we're
superior,
both so
but-
versatile because not because we're so great, but that we've done this so long that we've
Yeah.
learned this business so well that we could fall into any part and do it. Hell, even if it's trimming out a
besides
door.
you and the numbers.
Right. No, I can pull that off. I did it for years, but yeah. So I think when you're so versatile and you kind of know how to do it, it's hard to hand it off to somebody.
Yeah.
And that's been her biggest problem.
It is definitely, and whoever I hand it to is not going to do it as well.
Yeah, there's that concept that ultimately no one's going to care as much as you do.
This is true.
And you have to accept that. And then you have to say, well, what is 80% of me? And
Right.
can I get someone there?
Right.
And then be okay with that 20%,
Right.
maybe not being exactly the way I want it done, but it's getting done. And it alleviates or creates a lifestyle choice or different things like that. And
once you accept it, it's not as hard. It's that initial and that first transition, and I still struggle sometimes with passing the next thing off. And I noticed this with him when he was running the whole thing. Everywhere he went, he got the best deal on everything he bought every time. And so as he started handing it off, it was harder for him because the guys don't do it quite as well.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, well, what can I go, okay, that's fine. Oh, it's just going to cost a little more because now I can scale it to this. And so those are all things you just have to, if you want to be bigger, those are things
Yeah, when you
just have
scale, everything costs more money.
Yeah. What was there? Because I've heard this and I have not experienced this. You probably have. There is a really tough season in the in between when you're pretty small, bootstrapped, boots on the ground. Everything's like I said. You're going out getting the deals for flooring and all that kind of stuff. You're scaling, and then there's we fully scaled. I was talking with Hancock about his construction company and all that. And there's this in-between where it's like, if you live in that in-between, it's just really difficult life. You're not big enough to be having the systems and the people in place and all that, but you're not small enough that you can cut those margins and you're kind of high overhead, low income. Was there a season for you guys where you were like, man, this is really difficult because we're not big, but we're not small?
I don't think we ever had that season because
I think it happened so fast. Also,
and we really just worked all the time just to make it happen. I think by the time we kind of went through that, the transition probably wasn't as hard for us because we just worked so hard. But I do think there was a season there that as things were more expensive, like liability insurance or all of those things, that I just had such a hard time with it because we weren't making the money that I felt like $100,000 worth of liability insurance a year was
Justified,
like,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I mean, the first year that we spent, $250,000 on
workers'
insurances,
comp, like, what the hell?
I was like, this is it. We scaled
We're
too
done.
much. Let's go down.
wrap everybody up in pads. Like we got to
how do we
keep
go
everybody
backwards?
safe.
That's really what I wanted to figure out was how to go backwards. So there is that transition where you start having to pick up those big boy responsibilities, like those things, and the income didn't quite reflect it yet.
Yeah. There was a tension point, but like hiring someone, paying for those big expenses, you weren't grown into that full income. I think those always set the stage for expansion, and I'm nowhere near where you all are at, but in my business, every time I stretch and add something, it always helps it grow more than you think it's going to. And so, but yeah, that tension is always, something I'm sure you have to balance. And, one thing I keep hearing from y'all's story is just the level and the amount of hard work. A lot of people just think that
no substitute for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just want they want stuff just handed to them on the platter, and you're looking at 24 years.
There's sleepless nights, anxiety, stress, worry, failure. We faced a lot of things over the years. Yeah.
Yeah. It was
I
funny.
mean, we went through some bad times, right? I mean, 08 was awful.
Yeah.
But we pushed through, hammered it out, man, made it happen.
Figured it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was not easy. I remember pulling over on the side of the road, like tearing up when my last banker called and said, listen, we're not loaning any more money to anybody. You were the last one and we're done. And it was in like 08. And I was like, what am I going to do? I got to feed my family, man.
Yeah.
But guess what I did? I pulled over to tear up, and I looked over to the right, and there was a bank and a trailer, like in a parking lot. I'm like, did God put me in this parking lot for a reason? And I had mud on my shoes. I was at the landfill, had the dump trailer. And so I say, hey, I'm not going to be defeated today. Like, I'm going to do something. So I took off my muddy shoes and walked in this bank with no shoes on. And I said, hey, can you help me? And this awesome lady, Carla Hill, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Said, hey, just
come in,
welcome
homeless
me in
man.
at her desk. And I said, hey, here's the deal. I flip houses. I've done, hundreds and hundreds of deals. I'm a good customer. I've got money in the bank, but I need somebody to help me buy these flips. And dude, I talked that bank, and God opened the doors, and that bank just welcomed me in with no shoes on. And so we've had a lot of stories like that where there was no way to make it, and then God just opened up doors, right? So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So
cool. It was Hometown Bank in Pinson, by the way.
That's awesome. Yeah. Do you still do some banking with them? Are they still in a trade?
We just paid off our last mortgage with them last week.
We've got a checking account there. We kind of outgrew them a little bit, so it's hard to close that checking account.
Oh yeah,
leave it.
Good people though, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So earlier, I want to kind of circle back. We were joking about the purses, but I think celebrating wins is very important. And the fact that you know that about yourself, like, this is my win, this is my, hey, good work, how have y'all paused? Hit the pause. I'm sure it's pretty hard to hit the pause, and celebrate the wins. Like, what are some of the things that you guys have done for yourselves, for your team, that help you celebrate those wins?
Bought a lake house that we love.
Yes. We go on good trips frequently.
On trips.
For me, that's not as important. How what gets me energized is when I get a deal done, and then I'm like, okay, I got to find my next deal, right? So that's what energizes me. But for her, I think taking these little breaks is important, and so we try to do that.
I love traveling, and I do love that I'm able to do things for my kids. I feel like I didn't have those things, and it was so important to me that I could bless them or whatever. Now they're a little bit spoiled, but that to me was probably what drove me when we were a little bit younger. Is I wanted them to be able to have nice things. I wanted to put them in private school, or
Right.
So I do think that the family was the most. Now that we're older, now I want the purses and the trips.
And we'll ball out every now and then.
We can keep that
going.
Yeah.
These trips are fun, man.
Yeah. There is something to be said for I think even when you budget, and when you know your finances and stuff, and it's okay, we're going out to eat tonight. And it's that's what the budget's for. So I can eat that steak, or I can eat that, element, and whatever it is that you enjoy doing. If there's a budget for it and that you've made income for it, it's that's a good celebration. But when you're putting it on a credit card and you're doing it to I just need to feel better for another minute,
Right.
because everything else in life, that's when it's just it's such a guilty,
Right.
horrible feeling. But when it's like budgeted and you're in financial freedom and all that kind of stuff, man, there is nothing better than going on a trip and just being like, the menu, please.
Right.
Order it.
Right.
All
I
the
think
things.
for us, we lived so below our means so long,
I think
and we
that's key.
lived so tight. Dude, like we wouldn't go out to eat. Like we had our goal. We've got to build this nest egg so we don't have to rely on banks, right? So I think that was.
I think the '08 thing probably was one of the factors in that, is that we knew any day, what if banks want to stop lending to us? Then
Right.
we had to have enough money. And we're not going to have enough money if we live, too
Max
frivolous or even live at our means at the time. So, the kids would ask for something that I didn't feel like was important. Like, no, we ain't got money for that. So for a long
Our
time,
kids
they were
thought we
like,
were broke.
yeah. So, I mean, it was because I didn't want to spend the money for that. I wanted
Yeah.
that money to build up. And now we can finance most of our flips if we want to.
Yeah.
With cash.
Yeah.
So
It's
because
beautiful.
we've built that, it's a snowball, right? It starts out small, but as you get bigger, it grows very rapidly.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be where we are if we had spent money, even back when he was doing really well.
Yeah. It's funny because, I think back to even our conversation last night a little bit. I was joking about, you were like, someone was like, hey, can you maybe look at this house for a flip? And I was like, hey, pitch it to me first. Like Matthew's got he's got 31 deals. Did you see his Instagram? But it goes back to the hard work, and it goes back to the fact of like the legacy you've built. I mean, so many people I think want what you all have, but they don't want to put the work in. And I think probably some people even look at me and, where I'm at, and it's like I said, it's pennies compared to the growth, but we're all in our places journey.
That's right.
And I don't compare.
Yeah, you're right. Right.
But everybody would sometimes it's like, oh, I want that. But the level of work,
Do they really?
the sleepless nights, like you
The
said,
risk.
like the risk
There's
tolerance.
so much risk and liability that sometimes can be smothering.
Yeah.
Just that alone for me. I carry that probably more than he does.
He's like, that's what we got insurance for.
Roll Tide. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it really does come down to, do you enjoy the journey? Because for you, getting the next deal, I think that's one thing that I reflect, knowing you, the bit that I do, and you just love real estate. You
really
eat,
do,
breathe,
man.
and sleep it.
I
And you love Birmingham.
life too. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a pretty happy guy, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you enjoy the journey. It's not necessarily about because you talked earlier about the interview. It's like, how much more is enough? And it's not about that. It's about the fact that you love what you do, and you're going to
Right.
continue to do it and continue to challenge yourself
I stay hungry,
on new
right?
stuff. Yeah.
But we have
Yeah.
so many people now, I think that
That's really what
We're
drives
right.
me, I think, now.
Yeah.
Like, if we didn't have all these people relying on our business,
Right.
I'd probably tap out.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm done.
I don't know if you
Okay, for at least for a day. Come on.
and maybe it would look different. It
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
be
Right.
so what it is. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we do have a lot of people who work for us that we're it.
I used to have this thing where, I woke up broke every morning in my head, right?
Yeah.
And I almost had this panic, like, okay, I got to go get it. And there comes a day where you wake up, you're like, well, I'm not broke, but I'm still hungry, right? I still haven't arrived where I want to be. And I think that's what has always driven me. Sometimes when I see, my teammates, my partners exhausted, I'm like, well, maybe it's not quite worth it.
Yeah.
But I just don't tire, man. I really don't. Like, I might tire for a few minutes, but I rebound quick, man.
Yeah.
So, and I have to understand that not everybody is built like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having grace for it.
As
and
great as
feeling
Rebekah
that.
is, she's probably not necessarily built like that.
I'm not, but
And that's
some
okay.
of my exhaustion comes from
Just being around me.
no, and I don't want to say it's ugly, but maybe some of the mistakes made by the people who
Yeah.
work for us, and it's
Yeah.
just like, okay, I felt like I'll wake up and I'm done. I can't handle
Yeah.
this anymore. Why are they doing it this way? Why can't they listen? So there are times I do feel like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why scaling is not for everybody.
Yeah.
Because once you put these tasks in the hands of other people, they're going to make more mistakes.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
Managing people.
But
is tough.
over time, people get better and better and better. So if you can get over the
Sometimes.
initial growing pains, right, things get easier. Like for me, there are, and God, thank God for my team, but there are many houses that I go and look at to buy, and then I'm at every closing. So after closing, I hand the keys off, and it's like, guys, go do it. and I don't go back.
Wow.
And it is still done with the quality. It's well done. And every crew that we have, they get better and better and better too, right? So I think over time, everyone gets better. So it takes less effort and less time to do each property and each flip. And so I think time will cure a lot of those growing pains.
That's good.
If you can just, make it through. Yeah, you got to just push yourself, man. Yeah.
So you flipped a house or two.
Yes.
That is like, you know how to do it.
Dude, in
What
a
is
freaking
challenging?
fleet.
Yeah. The business is built for it.
Yeah.
You pass off the keys.
Not
you
only
close
is the
it, you
business
pass
built
off
for
the
it, but I
keys.
think we were built for it.
Yeah. So what is challenging you right now on your projects? Like what are the things that's kind of scratching that curiosity itch that like, that keeps that fire going? Because not every flip, I'm assuming, is like, hey, these are standard things, go do it. But there's projects that probably are like, man, I'm really invested. This is a fun, challenging, but fun project.
We do have some fun projects, even right now. Like I just bought the penthouse in Arlington Crest.
He's so excited
Dude,
about it.
it's so awesome. And
He's like, it's my penthouse now.
Yeah, it's like, dude, I want a penthouse just for a few months, but yeah. I think me trying to go into that role as like more of CEO is what I'm trying to learn to do better. Keep the teams motivated. Do you have anything to say about that?
Like the Trustful project, it's a little bit different, and so
I'm learning things every day
in areas that like I can enjoy sometimes. So like we'll actually, besides just designing it, we're gonna we'll furnish it. It's going to be completely done. So that's not something I get to do anymore, and so I kind of look forward to those things. So I do think doing something that maybe gives you something fresh can be
It can be fun. It can be exhausting too.
Yeah.
Because when things are moving so fast, you really don't have time to kind of think about it too long. Like, okay, we thought about it 5 minutes. Let's make a decision, right?
Yeah.
Things are moving very fast in our world. Sometimes almost too fast.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's like, jump on in. Let's talk about, so you have a team. Mm-hmm. You have people that obviously you lean on and stuff like that. Talk me through a little bit about the training process and just kind of expectations of like timelines of like, do you get someone on your crews and they're working, there's got to be a grace period. They may not hit the mark every time, but at some point it's like within 2 months of working with the crew, they should be up to par. And if they're not, we've got to figure it out. And I'm asking from the context of like, someone who also flips or other people listening flips is like, how much have you found that it takes for people to get up to snuff? And then if they don't hit that mark, it's like, hey, we're probably going to part ways because this is not a good relationship.
Well, I think that instead of parting ways, a lot of times, I think you have to find what people are good at doing and put them in that role. So not everybody is great at every role.
That's good.
So wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. So like the crews themselves, like the workers, a lot of times they'll bring someone on and they just handle that part. They fill in the gap until they're all, efficient. It's going to be like more of our supervisors that is going to be the ones that you figure out, okay, I hired them to do this, but this is not, we have to kind of figure out where they fill in the best.
Yeah. Like I like to find a person that I like and put them in a role that they're good at. Like, for example, I used to have this guy who I really liked, and he did vinyl siding. Not every house needs vinyl siding, but I would go down buy houses that need vinyl siding so I could work this guy, right?
Yeah.
So I like to build my team around people that I like, and then I try to find the right role for them.
Man, that is...
Make sense?
No, it does. I think it's a huge nugget.
Like you wouldn't put a guy who likes to plumb wiring a house, right?
Yeah.
So I think finding that role for each person, and I think we've done really good at that. Like right now we've got like one of our project managers, he couldn't even operate a drill if he had to. But man, he can like order material and get all this stuff organized, and it's like, so that's
logistically he's so strong.
Yeah, so I'm not going to put
not.
him on a job doing a punch list, right? He wouldn't even know how to hold a paintbrush. But dude, he can hold that damn cell phone like it's nobody's business, right? he can do group text and he can order stuff and that. So I'd be foolish to put him in another role. And you know, and you might get somebody who's having to do this other task, and he's like, "Man, I wish I could do what you know whoever's doing." It's like, well, this is his strong suit, and you know, you stay in your lane, let him stay in his lane.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we do have quite a few guys now. You know, probably on an average day, if you include subs and everybody, we have at least 100 guys like working today on our properties. No question.
Probably.
Yesterday, we stopped at like 3 houses, and dude, you could just 3 of the 33, and you couldn't even drive down the road. There were so many cars. So there's a lot of
one of
activity.
them. I was like,
Matthew
these
Gregory's
neighbors
on
have
in
got to
town.
be so mad.
We got one neighbor. I got 4 flips in one neighborhood, and you know, and the neighbors always love us, and we do a good job with like meeting neighbors, and you know, use a dumpster if you need it, or you know, but I'm sure it's not always easy.
Yeah.
No.
Having all this activity, because it's like ants on a hill, man. We're getting it done.
That's great.
Yeah.
Let's talk through some logistics.
Okay.
Average flip time. Are we talking
So
1 month, 2
that
months,
depends on
10
the flip,
months?
right? There are
There's
some
some
that
variety.
are painting carpet,
Yeah,
and there's
yeah,
some that are total rebuilds. So I wish I had that average. I feel like when I was able to run my little flipping business, I feel like I could get a house done really fast. Now we're a little spread thin, but I would say on a quick, easy flip, maybe 6 weeks.
Those are rare. Though.
Yeah.
Most
Because
of them are
we
not
don't do
and
quick,
easy.
easy ones. Yeah.
12 weeks is probably closer
Closer
to our average. I would
12
think.
weeks, you know, pulling permits, rewiring houses, replumbing houses, new heating and air. A lot of times, it takes time.
It does take
Yeah.
time, and sometimes the sequence, you know, the plumbers don't even be working when the electricians are
Well,
there. They get a little
we
frustrated.
built a good team of people that kind of only do our properties. So we have.
Yeah, that helps, but I mean, it's still like in the morning you hear the guys like, "Are you going to show up to the job? Why aren't you there yet?" You know, so there is still that push of trying to get these subs to do what they're.
on the time and all that kind of stuff.
It's a lot of intensity. Like we're pushing people.
A lot of
pretty
times,
hard.
one crew is working 2 houses. So like while we're waiting on the drywall to be done
They'll
or
flip to
whatever,
the
we'll
other.
go to
Or
the other
inspections.
ones.
Yeah.
So.
What have you found that, you know, is important, or kind of working through the different cities, inspections wise, or pulling permits, or different things? Are there nuances to different cities that have been harder to work with or easier to work with, or?
There are challenges sometimes, but most of the time, inspectors are great. Like we don't have any issues most of the time. It's rare, but there are some cities that, and it's the cities that you wouldn't expect there to be a problem are usually the biggest problems.
Yeah.
I don't want to throw out which cities suck. But yeah.
He's like, it's the mayor
like,
of
this guy's
For
Trustville.
years, it was
listening to
Centerpoint. You just no one even went into
Yeah,
Center.
Centerpoint was
It's tough.
difficult.
For
It's
years
tough.
it was.
Has it gotten better?
I don't know.
We won't go back.
Stay
there.
out. Yeah. I learned my lesson. Hey, I'm a fast learner, brother.
They've
Yeah,
told
yeah,
you,
yeah.
and you heard.
Yeah, I learn quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but
I don't
that-
stay in misery long.
Yeah, that's a good point, because, you know, for the most part, you know, and I heard there's reasons for that, and, you know, I'm not going to digress about that, but that is known that flipping and doing work for rentals, all that is difficult in Centerpoint, and I think it has warded off some, you know, potential investors and some money coming in. In some ways, it may be beneficial because there's probably some poor investors, but in some ways, it may have taken away some really good people who could have flipped and renovated the city, you know.
Right.
So one of the things I love you said
But
earlier.
I've done probably 200 or 300 flips in Centerpoint over the years. That's kind of where we got started. So I
Yeah.
used to love that area.
Yeah. So shifting, what areas do you like right now?
I love Vestavia, Hoover, Homewood, Mountain Brook, 280, the whole area, Indian Springs, Valleydale Road, Roebuck. I love Grayson Valley. I like Clay, Chalkville.
Crestwood.
Oh my God, Crestwood.
Yeah.
You know, I've got probably 4 in Crestwood right now in that area. Irondale.
I really like Irondale.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my
Irondale's
houses in there.
Unless you're in the Airbnb business, then
Yeah, they
you
put
need
the
to stay
kibosh
out
on
of
that.
Done.
Yeah.
You own a whole, like, not a whole street, but
No,
you,
it's a whole street.
you've,
It's a whole street, brother.
I know you were
Yeah.
trying to. We actually
Well,
sold
all
one
but,
to
all
you.
but
one.
Yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah, we
That's
sold
right.
that duplex
Yes,
to you.
I forgot
But
about that.
I know you've been acquiring them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so what was the thought behind like, hey, we're gonna own like this section and
Well,
stuff, just
yeah,
keep the
yeah,
quality
that
up?
necessarily
or-
wasn't my goal to own a whole street. My goal was to have as many rentals in one area. So, it's just easier for
Yeah.
maintenance, logistics.
It's almost like the multifamily model, but single family. home.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm a positive thinker, right? And I get a call and on these properties in Avondale that I did not buy, and I regretted not buying them. So I called the agent and said, dude, if you ever get another deal like this and I don't buy it, slap me. So
And you're like, I've been slapped 7 times since then.
right. I mean, I'm sore, man. I'm hurting. So Jimbo called me. He went home that night, that agent, and then he's getting out of his van and he looks next door and the neighbor's son, who's like 20 or 21, is unloading his truck. He said he was moving back home, that he just moved out of a duplex in Irondale. And so he's like, duplex in Irondale? And he said, yeah. He said, I think they're wanting to sell all their duplexes. They have like 20 or 30 of them. So
oh, wow. You're like, ring, ring, ring.
so Jimbo looked it up and figured it out, and so he called the owner, and the owner happened to know us, who's also a realtor, a seasoned realtor in town,
Yeah.
and she owned probably 60% of the street. And then so when I got those under contract, we found 2 other owners that owned a big chunk of the street. And we hunted them down, man, and like God opened the doors. It was pretty crazy how it happened.
That's
It all
great.
happened like in a 2-week period.
Yeah.
Where not everyone knew that I was buying the whole street, but it just happened, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And like you said, I mean, it's not
And I
necessarily...
feel like we've increased the value on that street.
Oh, 100%.
Dude, we've remodeled almost every unit now. Well, over
Maybe 10 units, which is
probably
20 doors.
60% of the. I don't know, a lot of activity.
Yeah.
And you can tell a difference on the street driving up it. It's sharp.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And like, I think, you may own it forever, maybe your like thing, or you may dispo it eventually, but you could sell it all off as if it was almost multifamily, because it's, or like a rent to, or not a rent to own, but a rental based like community,
Yeah, right.
that's happening a lot right now.
We're remodeling these like we're going to keep them forever.
Yeah.
And I think that's our goal. Once you start putting these rental properties on your tax return, and I don't want to have to recapture all that. So we'll probably keep these.
This is a great inheritance.
Yeah.
As long as they know how to run the business.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
It's a big if.
let's talk about legacy. Let's talk
Yes.
about the kind of passing, this on to other employees that you kind of, enrich by your
Yeah.
knowledge and all that kind of stuff. Family.
That's the goal. That's the goal, man.
Passing this on to family, the benefits of the financial freedom and stuff. What are some of your vision items for the future in your legacy?
So as far as our team, I would love to kind of not pass the torch completely, but pass more and more of the torch, which also probably means pass more and more of the income to our guys and let them kind of prove themselves and enjoy the benefits of our business. As far as the kids, I would love to hand off, each one of our kids have their own kind of plans in life, but if they ever wanted to tackle real estate, I would love to get them involved.
Yeah.
Who knows?
It doesn't seem to be going that direction. I mean, it was an option. We definitely didn't tell them not to, but
It might feel a little overwhelming to some people.
I think that's what happened. I think
Yeah.
we made it too big, so
Yeah.
all of them are looking at it that way.
Right, I can't take it
So
on.
I do think what our new design is that if we can have things like the rental properties, which are a little more passive income,
Right.
like if you just have a management company handling it and they get a check at the end of the year. I think that we're hoping to set it up to where those things can pass on, and the other things that are more active participants. Maybe.
Oh, is it active?
Yeah. Yes. Well, for us, all of it's pretty active.
24/7, 365.
all the time.
Those maybe that just doesn't I don't know. We don't know how those parts will look.
When we talk legacy too, there's obviously the financial freedom part we're talking about, but then what do you feel like legacy y'all have passed on as far as character elements of, work ethic is a clear one. I'm going to answer that one for you. But along those lines, in addition to work ethic that you passed along to your kids and your team, what do you feel like some of those traits are?
I think that's tough to say because
Like
I mean,
being
you don't want to
awesome.
say like I'm a baller and I'm taught my kids how to be a baller. It's not like, quite like that.
No.
I think probably I feel like our kids have watched us operate our business and watched us step up when we needed to step up to do the right thing. And I think that really
maybe more than the hard work. I think
Yeah.
even in the home I had a problem passing things on. So
Yeah.
I think I carried a lot of the load even for the children. So maybe I'm hoping as they get older that some of that work ethic really takes off for them. But I do think that we've really instilled maybe some stronger morals and ethics into them.
The integrity of the flip. They've seen it
integrity
over
in their
and over
life
again.
and how
Right.
they treat
Yeah.
others. So I do hope that that's the biggest thing that they take away. And then I would love to see them be successful in whatever it is that they want to take on.
find purpose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. I think, this conversation may have taken a little bit different turns than like, hey, tell me how to put a door in. You know?
Right. I'm probably not the best guy to tell you how to do that.
Anyway.
I can get it done.
But-
I've got a guy.
I think there's just, I've got to go.
I probably got 25 guys.
They can put a door in for
real
you.
quick, yeah.
But it's so interesting about talking about the relational side of things, the integrity of your flips, the character of hard work, and just the perseverance through 08. Even COVID too probably brought its own. We didn't even tap into that. I mean, it probably brought some
brought
issues.
some initial anxiety,
Yeah.
but I mean, somehow things
And
just
huge
just,
expense for
yeah.
lumber. Do y'all remember
Oh
that?
my God, it
man.
was crazy, man. Yeah, but
was
I mean, we always kind of pushed through, and it was actually a really good year somehow.
Yeah. And what I love too about your story, you said initially, you said, I love Birmingham. And I think that's such a key mark of y'all's legacy and the flips that you have brought. You have brought thousands, literally, of homes to people that would have been dilapidated, that wouldn't have been done as well. And that legacy of helping Birmingham have quality homes is something that I think y'all should be really,
Dude,
really
I
proud
love that.
of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everywhere we drove, I did that flip. I did flip down that street.
And then it's who the hell did that? For?
That's awesome.
That's probably more your line.
Well, if someone wants to, get a hold of you, track with you, figure out, like, learn from you, all those kinds of different things, how do they get a hold of you guys?
They can
and
just
kind of
Google my number. It's out there. You can call me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I appreciate the time. I always say, time is the most valuable asset we have. Something you can never get back. And so for you to sit down and just connect and share your wisdom, your knowledge, those nuggets we talked about, I mean, it's just, I'm honored.
Dude,
So,
it's been great. I appreciate you having us. I really do.
yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
Best of luck 24. You got to wrap up 31 projects and probably move on to another 31.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do you
Definitely.
think you'll
We're gonna do
do for this year?
Man, I don't know. We did like 29 million in flips last year.
Yeah.
Not 100 flips, but 29 million in volume, which is where we've kind of been in the past couple of years. So, with me, when I set goals, it gets me so much anxiety. So I kind of just have to do the best I can and just see what happens. That's
great.
kind of the what I kind of have to do. I'm a maniac, brother.
I love it, man.
yeah.
I love it. Well, I'm really excited about the Trustville Airbnb going up. I mean,
I
that
am
should
too.
be
I really am.
really great.
I think it's gonna be fun. Again, I'm learning so much. Like projects like that are so different than residential.
Yeah.
And working with the fire marshal and sprinklers and fire alarms and 150 grand on this, 150 grand on that.
Yeah, those kind of things. The commercial side of things, the liability ramps up, the due diligence ramps up,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it's stretching you. It's similar to the self-storage stuff
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
have merged into.
That's
So
been fun though.
yeah. Well, keep going because I like watching.
Yeah, I'm not stopping.
And,
brother.
and,
Yeah.
it, and it inspires me because
I got to
like
pull her along, but I'm not stopping. Yeah.
she's got a few more purses to go to.
Right.
And stuff.
At least a few more.
Make your list. Let's go get them. Let's work. Yeah.
That's work. But like I said, I appreciate your time. Thank you
man.
so much, and look forward to seeing what this year brings for you guys.
Hey, let's go, man.